Everybody, and welcome to our webinar today, Defining the AI era in Independent Retail. We're so excited to have you here today. My name is Lindsay Thompson, and I'm the editor and director of content development for the North American Hardware and Paint Association, or NHPA, as many of you probably know it a little better as. And so, NHPA is the trade association for independent home improvement retailers, and our whole purpose is to make the independent channel better and more profitable through education, advocacy, and networking. In my role as editor and director of content development, I get to oversee all the content that we produce under our two media brands, Hardware Retailing and Paint and Decorating Retailer. And I have the privilege of regularly interacting with retailers, wholesalers, and other industry players. So back in February, we hosted our first webinar with FastQuery, who you're going to get to meet with again today, and we explored how modern retail technology enables better outcomes by putting inventory and product intelligence directly into the hands of store teams. We got to meet Carrie Byron of Mythbusters fame and just an amazing all-over person and home improvement enthusiast. And she walked us through getting to meet Adam Gunnett of Busy Beaver Building Centers and Eric Hassett from Hassett Harbor, and really shared how they use FastQuery in their stores to improve staff training, tighten inventory control, and just create a better overall customer experience on the sales floor. So today, I'm so excited that we're going to get to continue the conversation with FastQuery and learn how FastQuery is positively impacting operations in the aisle where help is often needed most and beyond. We'll dive into how connected systems and unified store data can help retailers improve customer service, increase operational visibility, and empower associates with faster, smarter access to information. And we'll also get to meet two wonderful people from Nation's Best and hear how their operation is approaching AI and what the next standard for hardware retail excellence will look like. So it's my pleasure today to get to introduce you guys to our webinar panelists today. So Joe, let's start with you. Can you introduce yourself and briefly tell us about your role in the independent channel?
Yeah, thanks, Lindsay. And thank you to Kim and Tyler for joining us. So I'm Joe Bullock. I've been with FastQuery now for about 9 months. I just took over as the CEO a handful of weeks ago. We're still a very young company, but I think we're growing up really, really fast. So if I just reflect on our evolution as a company from our first webinar back in February to today. FastQuery started out just about 18 months ago as a tool that was really tailored towards frontline retail teams. And there's a handful of things that are happening in the technology ecosystem, and I'll pull up a couple of slides here to articulate that a little bit. But we've started to really galvanize our vision of the impact that AI can have in the retail space and specifically in the independent channel. And it's very exciting for us. I think AI has the opportunity to really level the technology playing field between the independents and the big box competitors in the space. And it's really become our North Star as far as where we're taking FastQuery as not just an interesting widget to empower frontline teams, but to really reshape the technology landscape in the independent space. Let me share just two slides very quickly to help kind of reframe our place in the universe. So in the AI first era and a protocol-based world, I think what we're going to see is what's being called the great unbundling, right? This move from monolithic software platforms to more modular, nimble, interconnected technology ecosystems. And in the old world, right, this monolithic approach to software was really characterized by, proprietary databases, closed UIs, and kind of rigid structures around data and workflows. In the new world, right, I think we're going to see technology landscapes that are more decentralized, more modular, and more interconnectable. And it's really becoming FastQuery's mission in an AI first world, right? And that is to shape the context window of everything that's important in a retail ecosystem. A lot of that context, I think, certainly comes from the data that is in our POS or ERP systems. But when we think about informing the most consequential decisions that retailers make, right? How do I optimize my product assortment? How do I set my prices? How do I set my store up for sales growth and margin preservation and success over the long run? There's a lot more context that goes into driving those kinds of decisions than just the data that's in our POS systems. And so, we see a lot of news coming from NHPA and hardware retailing about the AI investments that our big box peers are making. And I think genuinely that a lot of these big companies are really missing the forest for the trees when it comes to developing an AI strategy. So you see a lot of noise about Lowe's and Home Depot deploying chatbots and agents and kind of a series of point solutions that support various parts of their business. And in our world, we think there's really four pillars of a robust AI strategy that independents can adopt and really give them a significant leg up from a technology standpoint. One is, an AI strategy should empower the whole company, right? AI should provide that connective tissue between insights and action at scale. We believe AI should drive this precision and repeatability and consistency across the whole enterprise. And in our world, right, I think the place that FastQuery is kind of galvanized around is building an AI platform that really understands every critical aspect of our business, which is why we have kind of pivoted to this place of shaping the context window of the retail organization. So that's kind of what we're up to. I will stop there and hand it over to Kim and Tyler.
Excellent. Yeah. Hey, Kim, can you welcome to the webinar? Thanks for being here. If you don't mind giving us a brief introduction.
Yeah, absolutely. My name's Kim Peffley. I'm the Chief Operating Officer at Nation's Best. Been with Nation's Best just under 2 years now, and an incredible company filled with amazing people. So super excited to be able to be here. I do. Before joining Nation's Best, I started in the industry back in the late 1900s. I like to say, before AI was ever considered or invented. Late 1900s, in the late 90s, we started a family hardware store, and I got the opportunity to have one of the hardest jobs in the industry, which is a part-time nights and weekends cashier. And so I'm so thankful to have started my career in a problem-solving, customer-facing role. And I'm thankful for that ever since. I've gotten many opportunities to take different roles since then, and have led multi-stores across my families, and then a larger group of A stores, and really have spent a long time in the industry helping people solve problems and find ways to bring people together and develop others. I had many great years at NHPA, and so got to work with a lot of folks within the industry as well. And now I'm excited to lead the operations helm at Nation's Best, and to share a little bit more about what we've been doing with FastQuery. But I love this industry, and I'm one of those that got in and never got out, thank goodness. And I'm thankful for every opportunity we had. So I'm excited to share a little bit more about what we've been doing here at Nation's Best, and also just to answer any questions you might have.
Awesome. Yeah, we're so glad you're in the industry too, Kim. You're such a light. We love it.
Oh,
Tyler, how about you?
Yeah, thanks so much. So excited to be here on the webinar today. My name is Tyler Yates. I'm with Nation's Best. I am Nation's Best Senior Inventory Controller and Field Development. And so I have the honor and privilege of working with our store teams every single day across the country, from New Hampshire to California and everywhere in between. And with that, I have the opportunity to kind of see some distinct opportunities, and even more so, what we're going to talk about today. And so it's always exciting. Been with the company for just over 5 years in May, hit my 5 year mark. So I've been in every facet from down at the store level, helping make sure that lumber orders go out for teams, making sure that customers are taken care of, and now get to help those store teams across the country. So looking forward, just like Kim said, to sharing some of those insights and being able to really chat to what we're able to do with AI in our stores.
Yeah, excellent. Well, welcome to all of you. So, Joe, go back to you. So it was March of last year that I was first introduced to FastQuery, and it feels like just in that short amount of time, I think I met you last summer for the first time, and have really got to, work closely with you. So, can you give us a quick update on what FastQuery's been up to the last 6 months?
Yeah, happy to share some insights there. So, as I kind of alluded to, FastQuery started out with a very specific use case in mind, right? And I think there's a tremendous amount of value there, but we have grown tremendously in our capabilities and in our vision. So when FastQuery first came into existence as a company, right, we were very focused on empowering store teams to sell the whole store, answer any customer question or about a product or project or problem that they may be facing, and really help to elevate the customer experience in store. And I think we're seeing some great results with our early adopters, right? Driving conversion rate and attach rate and cart size and transaction size and that sort of thing. Over the summer last year, we started to dabble in more, kind of frontline task management, inventory controls types of functions. And, around the fourth quarter last year, when I came on board and allowed Anton, who's our CTO now, to really focus on product, we've seen a significant acceleration in the capability of FastQuery. So FastQuery is now a really robust analytics platform. FastQuery started out as kind of a single context window type of company that was designed to, to provide visibility into that context window across the entire organization. Now we're allowing our customers to curate additional data sets and expand the context window in ways that drives really robust analytics further up the retail food chain, if you will. We have now built a knowledge base which allows FastQuery to know a lot greater detail around the ways of working and standard operating procedures, and things like the employee manual. We're working on incorporating the entire Epicor Eagle handbook into FastQuery, for example. So we're also discovering that, and thanks in no small part to our friends like Tyler and Kim, that FastQuery is really able to operate as an AI native applications platform. And the things that we're able to do, frankly, we never really set out to do those things. But FastQuery can act as a kind of algorithm and workflow driven application platform for things like building cycle counting analytics, which Tyler and Tim over at Nation's Best and Tracula are embracing wholesale. FastQuery can build AI native loss prevention tools, replenishment tools. We've experimented with materials takeoffs applications. We are just about to release a strategic and competitive pricing application. Again, all run natively within FastQuery, rather than as a kind of deterministic, hard-coded software application. So, our eyes have really been open to the possibilities based on kind of the three or four major components that exist in FastQuery today, and
Mhm.
our customers continue to be in the driver's seat, helping us to shape what this company is becoming, and helping us ideate around the things that we can do with FastQuery. I think, we should go back to Tim and Tyler a bit, or to Kim and Tyler a bit, to talk about, specifically in the evolution of Nation's Best AI journey, right?
Mhm.
How engaging with store teams, engaging with Nation's Best teams outside of the core retail operations environment has really opened our eyes to some of the possibilities there.
Yeah, absolutely. Joe, that's one of the things that I think, FastQuery is just doing so well. The independent channel, retailers in the independent channel, they're continually working to meet customers where they are, tailoring their offerings and programs and, services, whatever it is, to their customer. And it's really great. It has to feel really great for independent retailers to have someone like FastQuery doing that for them. Like you guys have really gone deep into what's best for the independent home improvement channel. So that's very cool. All right, so Kim and Tyler, let's dive into it. So AI has been a huge focus in the independent space for the last couple of years. It's moved really from this buzzword to moving into this, must have, but how do we do it? And so I'd really love to hear from the both of you. Can you share some insights into how Nation's Best is approaching the shaping of your AI strategy? What were some of those major challenges you wanted to address with AI, and how did you build alignment across the company?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'll share a few kind of really boots on the ground tactics and some things that we focused in on heavily and were particularly interested in expanding and working on. So when we really started looking at this, when you look at it from, last year and even just really ramping up a lot into this year as we started working with FastQuery, um, I think everyone can agree that the AI conversation is sometimes a little cumbersome. It's almost a little scary sometimes, right? It's everyone saying you need to do this, but it's the how, right? And so we focus very heavily on saying, what are the things that our store teams are doing right now that either the process is cumbersome, like I'd said, or maybe it's something that we haven't been able to conquer. Maybe our ERP system, while it can do a million things for us and it's great, maybe there's some things that it can't do from an analytical standpoint. And so for us, we really focused in on some of those core needs. So we said inventory related things are a huge piece for us, right? Like that's something that we focus on very heavily. And so, kind of as Joe had mentioned, cycle counting is a whole different world now, right? We have photos of the products whenever they're counting. We have information about the product that's ready for them in the app when they're doing that task. When we talk about doing weekly out scans, right? So it's completely changed the way that we do some of those processes. Same thing with like compliance or things that we're doing as far as routine disciplines or, trying to make sure there's visibility to task. All of those things have changed fundamentally. And so it's been exciting to kind of watch and see how we've been able to institute these changes in FastQuery. And can't stress enough, it very much always starts with the problem. And then you start kind of evolving into how do we fix those problems. And of course, we've been delighted to see that a lot of those problems we can solve with this open context window that FastQuery provides.
Yeah, awesome. Kim, can you touch on some more like on the strategy side for your operation?
Yeah, absolutely. So when it comes to how we wanted to utilize FastQuery within the business, we really wanted to look at it from a strategic perspective to see how we could really execute better across the company. And so I really looked at it from a couple different pillars and worked really closely with our CEO, Chris Miller, to make sure that we had some clear direction on where we were trying to head by utilizing this tool. We were early adopters of AI, but we kind of had tried several different things, and we really needed to be focused into one category. And that's where FastQuery really became essential for us because it kind of gave us that all-encompassing system. We focused on things that were a challenge for us. Communication is a big challenge. I would say communication is a challenge regardless of how big your company is. It's just a challenge, right? And if you start to have multi-stores, it makes it a little bit more complex for us naturally. But we wanted to be able to have a place that we could ultimately have communication that's available to everyone, not just one or two people. I'm sure everybody could face this as well, is that we had a lot of different tools. It wasn't that we weren't communicating, it's that we were communicating in text and on phone calls and on emails and then Teams. And then sometimes there were group messages, and we were spending all this time going around and looking for where information was instead of housing in one single location, which became a pretty big challenge for us. And we found that by being able to house everything in one location, it helps us to not have to waste all that time searching for it. It's at our fingertips and it's at everyone's fingertips, right? So it's not that maybe one person or another person has control of that. And so we like to think that AI isn't replacing communication by any means. It's just making it more readily available. And FastQuery has kind of given us that tool. Another key category that we really wanted to focus on was we needed to be better at problem solving and innovation. So we ultimately needed to have not a few really good decision makers, but a whole team of folks that would be able to solve problems. And really, FastQuery one of the most exciting things is that it got everybody thinking a little bit differently. I talk a lot about when people have a problem and they bring it to the manager or the manager brings it to someone. I always say they gifted you their problem, and I like to say I'm gifting it to you back because I want to gift you a unique skill to be able to be a problem solver. And FastQuery has definitely given us that. And the mindset shift of our teams is just unbelievable. That we used to be presented with problems and we would ask for solutions, and now they think, well, I wonder what FastQuery would do with this problem,
Mhm.
right? Or I wonder how we can lean into this. And so we wanted to make sure that it was a tool that had all the capabilities to be able to help us solve those problems. And so ultimately, we needed to have that clear visibility, that collection of items within. Um, Two other, key categories I think that are pretty essential to touch on is, we struggle a lot with scaling institutional knowledge and ensuring that not just a few folks in the store know how to do everything. That doesn't bode well to, amazing customer service. We need to be able to have an army of folks and a big team of folks who can solve the problems. And in our industry, that's a challenge because you don't know if somebody's coming in because their basement flooded or they need to replace a few outlets, they need some lumber, or they just need some grass seed. You don't really know, right? And so kind of having that ability to be able to have information that's readily available and literally in your hands to be able to answer any questions that may be beyond your skill set has given a lot of confidence to our folks. And I think the last one that was really important to us from a strategic perspective was just making sure that we had consistency in execution. We put out a lot of initiatives and we get really close to done with a lot of them. But it's really, really hard. That little bit of space that lives between almost there and done is really the part that has the biggest impact in ensuring that you are successful. And whether you have one store or 60 plus stores, making sure you have accountability, visibility, and reinforcement of the standards you're trying to put in place is essential. So it really helped us close that gap between knowing what we needed to do and actually getting
Mhm.
it done. And so we wanted to partner with someone that could help us bring all of those together, which is a lot, right? It's kind of what we've all been trying to figure out for a long time, and then basically make it in a tool that anyone could use. So a lot to
Mhm.
think of when it came from a strategic standpoint.
Yeah, that's so interesting. And so, AI, we really are breaking new ground, within our industry, within our channel. And so it can be really hard to know where to go. I was just thinking about this. So my husband and I, when we were teenagers, didn't have cell phones, but now we are raising kids with cell phones. And we're like, man, we have to develop a strategy and we're just figuring it out as we go because we have nothing to base it on. And I think that's something that Nation's Best is doing a really great job of is really starting by defining your AI strategy. So Kim and Tyler, I'd love to hear more about your approach to, creating this AI strategy as you dive in.
Yeah, I don't know, Tyler, if you want to jump into one of the things that we knew we needed to ultimately do was kind of bring together a team of people to help with that. So we pretty early on, Chris was like, we need a team, and as with most great ideas, ultimately, we try to bring in a collection of folks, really cross-functionally, to make sure that we've got a good group of folks. So, and Tyler, I'll let you speak to it as well too. But we brought people obviously in from operations, inventory, IT, HR, leadership, sales, really kind of all across the board, and sat around the table with different ideas of what was important to us. And I think that that helped us a great deal. But Tyler, you can kind of speak to the team a little better as he instantly became the lead of that group. He kind of became our captain, as you might say. So Tyler, I'll let you speak on the AI committee.
Yeah, for sure. Thanks, Kim. Yeah, so, as we started kind of forming that AI steering committee and really started to look at what is our strategy, where are we going? Like Kim mentioned, that was very much step one is let's get everyone in a room and get some key influential decisions made. And I think something that's important, whether you're one store or you're 60 plus, when you start making those decisions about your path, what I've seen from the different partners that we have and the different facets of the business is that everyone has an AI based tool, right? So everyone is pulling an AI tool into their ecosystem. The problem is how ingrained is it, right? Is it just something that's thrown on top of the tools that are already available, which doesn't have to be a bad thing. But what we decided from that committee and what we decided was most important to us was finding a partner, not just a tool. So when you have multiple tools, it can get very confusing if you're trying to throw, some AI-based processes into a bunch of different pieces of your business, and it's 10 different tools from 10 different companies. It can get very cumbersome and confusing. And so that was a big piece for us from the start is finding a partner that will continue to evolve with us as we see different challenges, that we face. And so when it comes to working with FastQuery, that's been an exciting piece, has been the ability to really kind of define what the problems are with them and be able to start kind of adjusting.
Mhm. Yeah, yeah, absolutely.
A couple things to add there. In in our evolution as a company, right? We started out with a very narrow focus in the retail operations area, and the team there at Nation's Best really challenged us to expand our thinking, and I think took a really pragmatic approach around building a strategy that did incorporate feedback and use cases from across the organization. And Tyler really really quarterbacked a lot of those discussions, and FastQuery went into a lot of these discussions just not knowing what we didn't know. And so, we talked with folks, of course, in the inventory retail operations arena, but also accounting and lumber and building materials purchasing and marketing and merchandising and HR, e-commerce, and all the way up to the executive team. And what we discovered in the course of those conversations, I think really surprised all of us. Um, the Nation's Best team ended up defining essentially a roadmap for us across every one of those functional units of the business, and defined over 80 unique use cases that FastQuery could activate immediately, and subsequently a handful that would be kind of roadmap types of use cases for us as well. And so the opportunity to kind of expand our horizons outside of the retail operations organization absolutely opened our eyes into the kinds of things that FastQuery can do and support, and really, I think just opened our eyes into what the future of our company could become.
Mhm.
Yeah, absolutely. So, kind of shifting our focus now from the strategy side of things to the adoption side of things, Tyler and Kim, I'd love to hear, what's been the reception at Nation's Best to this new AI first approach to technology? What does that adoption curve look like for you guys?
I'll let you go ahead and start with that one, Tyler. I have a few
Yeah,
thoughts. I know you were in the trenches on this one for sure. So,
yeah, absolutely. So, when we're talking about adoption, it's easy to get a little bit in the weeds as far as, you have this new tool, right? And I think what happens a lot of times is you think, I need to know every single facet of everything this tool can do right now, and I need to move forward with it quickly. And what we've realized is a lot of times it can take just one, what I like to call a wow moment for a store team to be sold for life, right? So there's one influential thing that they do with their customers or a decision they make in the store every day. And so when you're talking about adoption, making sure that every team member has one of those wow moments that allows them to win, is huge. And so when we look at that adoption curve, um, it can be scary, but when you take it in chunks like that and you make sure that they know that this is a tool to assist them in doing their work better, it's a great tool for management to be able to make sure that tasks are being completed, even to the support center level, or for those of you that are owners, being able to take a moment's notice to really get a nice high level look at how different processes are going. It's really a game changer, and it really defines the ability for us to kind of expand, what does AI mean for us, and be able to grow with it.
yeah, I think too, it was important to make sure that we kind of piloted and tested it in the stores in a way that we could understand what potential feedback may be as it kind of came out to us. And we very strategically, picked a few locations that for different reasons. One, that someone that we knew would probably love to be an early adopter of trying something along these lines. Some that, were working on some inventory challenges and needed additional tools and needed opportunities to have some solutions. Other stores that had a lot of newer employees that were really struggling with trying to get kind of as much development to the teams as they possibly could. And so, we ultimately put together a group of folks that we tested it with in the stores. I can tell you that if you called any of them right now, they would say you cannot have it back. This FastQuery is mine. That mine. They hold on to them very closely, and they're big believers in it. So much so that they've really become advocates as we roll it out to the rest of the company. And we have a strong group of really, I think you're calling them our ambassadors, right, Tyler, that they speak so highly. I spoke with a group the other day that was just talking about, regardless of, where you are in the industry or how long you've been in the industry or kind of even what your role is, there's all these differing factors about how they're ultimately utilizing FastQuery. And I think we spent a lot of time focusing on like making sure we were ready for what would happen if they did not want to take on the tool. And instead it was more, when is my turn? When is my turn? When is my turn? As we kind of went through the rollout. So it was really interesting to kind of see that adoption come through from the team.
Yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely.
absolutely.
So Tyler, you talked about these wow moments. Do you have any other specific examples of from your real life in the stores there?
Yeah, absolutely. So I would love to share some of those wow moments. And I know some of the viewers out there are probably interested in seeing, some live demos. So I would love to show you some of those wow moments and some of the things that we've captured that we feel are great examples of those wow moments. One of them I'll start with, and this is probably one of my favorite stories that has come out of getting the stores onto FastQuery as we continue to expand out the locations that are on it. Um, one exceptional feature of FastQuery is the ability to break down language barriers. And what I mean by that is FastQuery allows you to have an ongoing conversation with a customer to a sales associate, and it will do ongoing translation between store team and that customer. And I'll never forget, I got a couple of these notes from a couple of managers out there in the stores, and there's nothing more exciting than taking a customer that was walking into that store. They probably know that sometimes maybe they have a hard time because of their language barrier. Maybe at that time they didn't have dual speaking language team member on staff at that point, and they feel deflated, right? Like they're already going in knowing I'm going to have a hard time. And I'll never forget this story, but at one of our locations, that customer came in, the manager had noticed they came in and were very deflated. And the first time that they got to work with an employee while they were using the FastQuery app, their eyes lit up, right? Like their whole like persona changed because they knew that they were going to be able to get the help they need. And so I'll never forget, the manager telling me this story because they were just going back and forth. They were actually joking in the app while also getting the help that they needed because it was like this ongoing communication thread that was able to happen. And so that was definitely a huge wow moment for quite a few team members across the company to be able to talk with those Spanish speakers. That's definitely a dominant secondary language for us in a lot of our markets. And so that's been huge. A few other things that we've been able to do. I'll go ahead and share my FastQuery app now, and we'll look at a couple of other examples. There we go. So a couple of other examples that I want to kind of show. One of them is going to be task management. So, Kim kind of spoke to, when you have a task that goes out, right, or you have something that's happening in your store, how do you describe the task and how do you describe what needs to happen? That can be very difficult sometimes, right? So when you're trying to make those kind of calls, you really want to have it structured. You want to have it task oriented. You want to make it so that your team member knows exactly what you're expecting. And so a great example of this that we use kind of as an example for you guys today was um, we had a new Rust-Oleum line coming out, right? And so to kind of see what that would look like, we actually took that directive and placed it in FastQuery. And it was able to provide a really good kind of guide for the store team. And so, when we're in the FastQuery app here, I'll be going to the to-do area. That's where tasks live. And then when you do that, you're kind of able to kind of see what your new tasks are. If there's any that are assigned to you, it would be in the My area. So you can see here with this one, there's a ready seal turbo set new assortment, right? And so with that happening, it gives you a description of the task, kind of, what's the goal, right? Like what are we trying to accomplish? And then it also provides you a checklist, a line by line checklist that says, hey, these are the things that we need to do to make this happen. And then that team member, whoever's assigned to it to do that process, is able to mark it as done. And that's where, this stems from multiple areas. One, it makes your team very task oriented, but it also helps for owners or managers to really understand where's your team at, how are they doing on accomplishing their goals and the tasks that they're set out to do. And so this has been something that we are continuing to, get into and definitely expand on as the task management. A couple of other ones that I would love to share. So I'm going to go and share a couple of kind of inventory exploration examples. And so here's one that we actually had kind of worked on as a great example. So you can see here, um, it's able to do a lot of analytical research for you. And what's exciting is you can then expand deeper on that. So for example, this query that I placed, and this was simply done from me talking to the app, says in the past 12 months on aisle 11, each location code, what has been my sales in each of those sections? And so then it really breaks down. It says, okay, in each of these location codes on aisle 11, how are we doing in sales and sales trends? And so it kind of breaks it down in a graph, but then it also comes down here and starts to say, okay, let's really start to dissect those location codes. how many SKUs are in those locations, how many units have we sold, how much revenue have we had, and what's been our gross profit and our average GP% on those products. And so I just want to, kind of remind you guys, this was with a simple one sentence prompt, and it's already pulling all of this information. So really exceptional. And what's exciting about it is, Joe has talked to it being a context window. It really allows you to say, I've got this context window with all of the information about my business, and I can go as deep as I want. So this was with a one sentence prompt, but it can go much deeper. And it can get much,
Mhm.
much deeper. What's exciting is because of that power of AI on the background, it's also going to give you some observations, right? Like I love this one. So the left side of aisle 11 absolutely dominates the revenue. So the first section on the left side, the second and the sixth section account for 57% of the aisle revenue um, for aisle 11. And so this starts to allow you to have conversations, right? You can say, do we need to expand out, what we're offering? Do we need to maybe reduce on some SKUs that are not selling as well? So that's a great example of inventory analytics. And again, that's off of one sentence prompt, and you can go so much deeper. You can continue to talk with it based off of this and start to get more into, well, if I'm getting that much revenue gain off of the left side of aisle 11, what are my slow movers on the right side that are causing the most increase in inventory valuation with the least impact? And you can start to analyze in that way as well. So that's another great example. And then when we look at it from a couple of other areas, I've got a couple of other examples. Joe had mentioned being able to have all of your knowledge base information in the system. So, for example, this one it was just a simple prompt because we have our nation's best employee handbook loaded into the knowledge base. I was able to say, do we get paid holiday pay for July 4th holiday? I know those kind of questions are huge for the team members out there in the stores. And so it was very quickly able to say, yes, you do in fact get to get holiday pay for Independence Day. But then it also doesn't just stop there, right? Like if it didn't go further, that could be confusing for store teams. So it says who's eligible. If the store opens, what does that mean? Is your store closed? Please check with leadership. And so it just kind of helps with being able to understand what the goals are and what the possibilities are. And the last example I'll give is SOP, right? So my question was, what does our standard operating procedures say about outscans? How frequently should it be done? And again, one, it gives the guide. So that PDF that we placed in the knowledge base is available for store teams to grab right away. But there, right at the top, it says once a week, but also goes much deeper into what does an outscan look like and how does the process function. So those are just some great examples of real use cases. These are the type of things that our store teams are doing every single day in the FastQuery app, and it's fundamentally changing the way they handle their business.
Yeah,
Tyler, before you close that up, quick question. I saw your Tracula counts in the task management piece. Tracula was the origin story of our relationship, right? I think Adam Gunnett over at Busy Beaver had introduced us back in November, December timeframe to build an integration into the Tracula algorithm and be able to essentially run their cycle counting functions through FastQuery natively. Can you just walk us through the UI there and the premise of the value proposition? What does Tracula do? Why is this helpful?
Yeah, absolutely. So Tracula at its core is a cycle counting tool. Originally it was just available to Epicor Eagle users. It was built into Epicor Eagle based on Compass. And so, obviously that really limits the amount of store teams that have the ability to use that tool. And so, FastQuery was able to create the ability to use that data to actually create a nice systematic process for store teams to do those cycle counting tasks and to make sure that their inventory is staying as clean as possible. And so our store teams love it. It's super intuitive and super easy to use. For example, let's say I'm counting this here in aisle one, those nails. If you tap on the photo, it actually ups the count by one each time. If you swipe from right to left, it drops the count by one. But if you need to do much more, insight, if you need more information, you can click on the text. And then at that point, it comes up to a whole new world of opportunity. you can actually, for those counts that are much higher, you can put in a higher count number. You can change the location code. So if your location code's incorrect, you can update it here as well. And then it provides you a whole, kind of plethora of information that can be super valuable when you're doing a cycle count. So it doesn't just leave you at that knowledge. I love that it also has the ability to show you on hands in other locations. This also happens if you're having a conversation with a customer. It will let you know your sister store's on hands if you have stores close to the current store that they're at. And a new addition. And I think this is a perfect example of FastQuery saying, we listen to you, we hear you. We really wanted for those team members to on the fly be able to kind of have an idea of what does our cost look like, what does our GP look like, in case there's an opportunity for a quick movement there or a quick decision. Obviously, we wouldn't want customers to see that information, and so they were gracious to supply us with a way to hide that information unless the team member intentionally hovers over it and it will provide that information. So a lot of great kind of intuitive processes when it comes to doing those cycle counts now.
I reflect on, some of those early conversations around cycle counting and how that conversation has evolved over the last few months. What started out as a pretty simple integration for cycle counting, I think has evolved into a much more strategic approach to listening to some of the data signals that are coming out of nation's best data. So things like, a negative quantity on hand, right? We know that those are situations where you maybe have a shortage claim. There's some kind of anomaly that needs to be investigated there. Things with no location codes, right? For our customers that want to use FastQuery image and description data, right, in their e-commerce sites, you basically build tasks not just for running cycle counts, but for enriching, the data in your organization, to with greater precision.
Yeah, excellent. Well, thank you for sharing those, Tyler. I think it's so great to, it's one thing to hear it all about the great things FastQuery is doing, but it's a completely different thing to get to see it in action. So thank you for sharing those. So Joe, let's shift over and let's talk about analytics for a couple minutes. So one of the big developments you already mentioned at FastQuery in the past year has been this evolution from a tool for frontline associates to a powerful tool for analytics. So can you talk to us more about this evolution?
Yeah, we think this is a huge deal for us, and has become one of the really essential functions of FastQuery, moving the value proposition further up the managerial food chain, if you will. So I've got a couple examples that I can share of analytics outputs and use cases that we've been experimenting with, right? And so, talking about the shaping of the context window, right? A lot of the consequential decisions that we make as retailers, the information that informs those decisions isn't necessarily coming from our POS system, right? It's coming from our competitors, from our geographies, from seasonality trends, and this is not live yet, but will be later this week or next week. The ability to do some really detailed analysis around assortment optimization for seasonal buys and seasonal resets. And let's see. FastQuery, with a very simple prompt, right, will get you a tremendous amount of competitive intelligence, market intelligence, compared to historical trends and products that you have in your POS system. It will, unprompted, provide really robust data visualizations. So, this is a seasonality or seasonal purchasing optimization and assortment optimization use case, right? We've got both ACE and Do It Best and Orgill all have really, really robust data sets that their retailers have access to do, that their retailers have access to, that'll enable our customers to do really deep level assortment optimization. It will build scoring methodologies, right, for product recommendations that you should bring into your assortment. We'll give you some visualizations around where the big opportunities are, and give you, really detailed recommendations on assortment optimization with a rationale. We can do things like detailed revenue and costing analysis, whether via department, as in this example, right? Department revenue over the last 12 months, with a couple different visualizations. And the last one that I will point out here is, this is, Tyler was showing the mobile interface. For a lot of these analytics use cases, our customers are pivoting to FastQuery on the web, which has everything that you can do on mobile plus more. So in this example, right, we asked for a full analysis of sales velocity and SKU productivity across our top 20 product manufacturers. And you can see that just with a very simple prompt, right, rather than having to go back to run reports or dig through dashboards or spreadsheets, FastQuery is able to provide some pretty profound insight into what are the most productive manufacturers that are in my assortment. Interestingly as well, like all of this, none of the outputs in FastQuery are static. So all these things can be sorted, filtered, pivoted, that sort of thing. So, the analytics capabilities for us are relatively new, and we're continually exploring new ways to define analytics prompts that really drive value for our customers, and eliminate hours and hours and hours worth of analyst kinds of data partitioning and data analytics. So in the assortment optimization piece, for example, right, this is a 15,000 line dozen tab spreadsheet that we analyzed here. This prompt took about 10 minutes to run, right, to get this visualization and the top 50 recommended items. And then we asked FastQuery to do a little bit of deduplication, right? Make sure you're not recommending items that I already have similar items in my assortment. So this took about 5 minutes. If I was doing this kind of analysis manually, it would have easily taken me 8, 10, 15 hours to get to this level of detail. So we think as FastQuery becomes more of a really powerful analytics tool, right, the use cases move up towards manager and operator kinds of use cases, to really unlock the power of all of the data that our retailers have access to.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm sure our attendees, their brains are just turning right now thinking, oh man, where could all these different areas that you can use FastQuery. So I want to leave a couple minutes of time at the end here for questions yet, but I want to wrap up. So Kim and Tyler, so can you just close this out and kind of talk about the timeline for your next steps with FastQuery on full deployment? And then how do you plan to activate the use cases that we just discussed here?
Go ahead, Tyler. You can talk through your rollout plan.
Yeah, absolutely. So we're in the midst of getting that process going right now, and getting those team members out across the country onto the FastQuery app. And right now, the full deployment is very much focused on making sure that we do it in chunks that allow us to give each team member the time that they deserve to make sure they understand the process. And so, the one thing that I can give a recommendation if you do deploy is make sure that you're giving them time, your team members time to understand what the tool means, and treat it as a exciting new opportunity, not don't turn on requirements day one, right? Like let them start to explore and then start to activate those use cases as the team members get used to using it in their everyday lives.
And I think too, the other piece of advice that I would give is that at different parts of your company are going to use it in different ways, as Joe has kind of very well it kind of explained for us. And so, as you roll it out, really be considerate of which group you're working with, what steps are going to be the most important, where those quick wins are going to be at the beginning to get everyone excited, and really build kind of a group of folks like we have with our ambassadors that share their stories because we're learning as much about what the app can do from those that are using it as we are kind of going through it. And so, one of the great examples from one of our ambassadors that shared, she was talking about using it as a development tool from the front line. And she spoke that she's like, I have a hard time hiring folks that have hardware knowledge. She said, but I have a lot of folks that are used to using technology. They have phones in their hands when they arrive to the interviews. And she said, so now I know I can give them that knowledge right away. And so it was a quick win for her. And it might have been someone else's that it was technology. I can speak from our executive team level. There's not a regular conversation that doesn't happen in our operations level that we don't say, I wonder what FastQuery would do with this, right? Let's put this into FastQuery and to kind of stimulate our mind. So, rolling it out and getting your whole company to use it, I think will really change the mindset and how much it can become your single power of communication and knowledge and just an overall tool that the whole company will use.
Yeah, excellent, excellent advice. So, Joe, let's wrap up with you. What's next for Fast Query? What's next on this journey?
Yeah. Our customers continue to be in the driver's seat. I think, we are going to be focused on activating use cases, across some of those other operational functions, that most retailers have in their organizations. We have some really, really cool things coming out very soon around competitive and strategic pricing. We have built into FastQuery some data feeds and data sets that are not even available to ChatGPT and Claude users, for example. Which again, we think we're trying to really curate the most valuable bits of information and context that really drive retail performance for our customers. What happens beyond that? I think we'll absolutely have a fast query marketplace, maybe by the end of this year, where our customers can come and essentially, subscribe um, to services that resemble applications that they would otherwise, go and procure separately. So I think the marketplace solution is really, really exciting for us. We've dabbled with materials takeoffs, and are considering building an NTO utility, which will probably again become part of that marketplace ecosystem. So yeah, a lot of exciting things for us coming down the pipeline.
Awesome. Very awesome. So, well, and the conversation isn't going to end here. In just a couple weeks, we'll be hosting our 2026 Independent Home Improvement Conference, and Joe will be there doing two live panels with retailers Jason Blair, Jeremy Peterson, and Adam Gunnett. And they're going to continue to explore these practical applications for fast query and AI. And Joe's going to jump into this idea of this unbundling and agentic commerce. And it was just going to be a two really, really great sessions over the course of the 2 days. And so We are offering right now a buy one, get one free registration offer for the IHI conference. And so we hope that if you are already registered, that you'll come join us in Orlando at the end of July. All the information on the conference can be found at ihiconference.org. And I just want to say a huge thank you again to Kim and Tyler. Your support of the industry and the channel and NHPA and just always being willing to share your ideas and best practices really just makes the whole channel better. And we just really appreciate it. So thank you, Kim, and thank you, Tyler. And then also, thank you, Joe, again for joining us and sharing all about FastQuery. Thank you to all of you who have been attending here. If you haven't already, please sign up for our NHPA emails to stay up to date on the latest industry news and trends. You also get access to our educational resources and then be the first to know about future webinars. So let me just double check there aren't any questions. Anything? All right. Well, great. Well, thank you guys so much for joining us today. And I hope that you have a great rest of the week and we'll see you soon in Orlando. Thank you, everybody.
Thanks, Lindsay. Thank you all.
Thanks so much.
So much, guys. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you. Bye.
Bye.